And then we just sort of migrated into video when the opportunity to interview Russell Peters came up. And the moment we realized it can actually turn into something was when Russell had openly said, you know, during the pandemic, they were some of the darkest days of my life. And his ex had, you know, him and his ex had split up. She had taken his kid. And he's like, I'm in this 12,000 square foot house. I don't have a single photo of my child. And he's like, that was the darkest moment of my life. And when he was opening up to us, and I was like, this is episode number 1. I was like, I think we're on to something here. As of January 1st, 2023, the first 15 episodes of Gents Talk, which is season 1, are now featured on all domestic and international Air Canada flights.
Yay! Founded in 2017, StartWell is Toronto's independent hub for innovators to collaborate. Our podcasts relate perspectives from the world's most diverse urban population to reflect unique insights into global business, media, and culture. So Samir, Matthew, thanks for joining me in the studio.
Thanks for having us.
It's awesome to have people who work in the studio join me on the mic to talk about working in the studio.
Yeah.
It's kind of meta.
A little bit.
Right?
Full circle moment.
Yeah, you guys are the guests. How does it feel?
Good.
I feel like I should be asking you questions right now, but I'm just trying to like, nope, that's not what you're doing here. You're just sitting back and...
Today you get to share your story.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about how you guys know each other. Before we jump into the kind of the show that you do in this studio, let's talk about like your relationship. Like, how do you guys know each other?
Yeah. So what was it? 2021?
I'm bad with years, but sure.
Okay. So 2021. So I'm the editor for Gents Post, which is a premier men's lifestyle publication. It's based in Toronto, national in scope. We have an actual growing U.S. audience base as well, which is really cool.
But digital publication.
Digital publication, right? Yeah. Well, we'd like to get into a point where, you know, when you know how publications start doing covers, and every so often a publication will drop a physical cover. I mean, that's like the cool thing to do, but we're not quite doing that. So anyway, there is this one individual who used to do some work with the Stamina Group. Now, Gents Post is part of the Stamina Group of publications. That also includes Wander Eater and View the Vibe and whatnot. And
so these are all like Toronto-based, kind of Toronto-focused publications.
Well, View the Vibe is Toronto-based, very local, right? Wander Eater is for the traveler, and it's global.
Okay.
And Gents Post is Toronto-based, national in scope, but growing in the U.S., and the idea is to get it global because the topics are very global in nature. It's not Toronto-centric. So the individual had reached out and said, hey, I know this individual who would be like a perfect fit as a contributor to Gents Post.
One individual was talking about another individual.
Pretty much. But the other individual turned out to be Matthew.
Yeah.
Okay, so who was the first individual?
Her name was Meryl.
Okay.
So Meryl reached out and said, she was doing some work, and she reached out and just said, hey, Samir, you know, I know this individual named Matthew. I think he'd be a great fit. Would you like to meet him? And then what was it, like a video call or something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. And then we just hit it off. We talked for about an hour about, you know, stuff he's into and why he would want to write for Gents Post. And from there, you just started writing for Gents Post. And then when the idea of Gents Talk, the podcast series, because there was a written format to it initially.
Oh, okay.
So when the idea for Gents Talk, the video series came up, it was just a natural, like, hey, let's just do this together and run the thing.
Nice. So it's new. You guys know each other like a couple of years.
Yeah.
A couple of years, yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And then even itself, like Gents Post is around, like it got started right when you guys got started, right? It's new?
So it started, the initial concept idea, so Stephen Bronco, who is the creative director and editor-in-chief for all of the publications.
Right.
So he came up with the idea for Gents Post during COVID, during the pandemic.
Okay.
And reached out to me at some point, I don't have the exact date, and just said, would you be interested in, you know, I see the stuff you do online and, you know, you talk a lot about these topics. So would you be interested in coming on board and supporting the publication. And I said, yeah, absolutely. This is great. It's the middle of the pandemic. There's not really much going on. And I'm like, you know what? I've never done something like this in this space, but I'm interested in the topic. And then from there, it was maybe a good 6-7 months before then the conversation with Matthew happened. And after that, Gents Talk, like I said, was already up and running since inception, really, because we were doing these interviews with US-based actors and musicians and entrepreneurs. And I came up with the idea of Gents Talk because Gents post. And so it was always in written format. And then we just sort of migrated into video when the opportunity to interview Russell Peters came up.
Right.
Yeah.
And how did that come up?
So he was in town because he was doing some work with this real estate investment firm.
Random?
Very random.
What?
Yeah.
It's like, who wants an apartment in the Russell complex? The penthouse is owned by Russell. If you're a good boy, Russell will invite you over for a drink.
So his the public relations group that was doing work with him, or with the real estate firm, reached out and said, hey, Samir, would you be interested in interviewing Russell Peters? And I thought, okay, cool. This could be another written segment, and it can help sort of bolster that, we're a serious publication. And then I stopped and I said, you know what, for about a year now, I've been doing these interviews over video, and every time I write about them, no matter how much time I spend writing, I can never fully capture the authenticity, the emotions, the passion in what the person is saying and talking about. And so if there was ever a moment to convert it into a video podcast series, it was Russell Peters. And so we had hired a videographer. We ended up working at a different studio, and it was the same day we came here for the first time.
Yeah,
afterwards.
I recall. You came after the interview,
Right
and you were
after.
like, why did we do the interview there? Oh my God, I wish we knew about this.
So we did it there. They were fantastic. It was at the Staples studio. They were really wonderful in helping us out, but we had to hire a videographer, and that's where there was a bit of a limitation in the sense of we had to broker too many different moving parts, and it all had to come together, which made it so difficult. Yeah. But we were lucky that we were able to do it. The space was great. The videographer did his stuff, and he was good too. And then we sort of packaged it up and said, all right, can we actually turn this into something? And the moment we realized it can actually turn into something was when Russell had openly said, during the pandemic, they were some of the darkest days of my life. And his ex him and his ex had split up. She had taken his kid. And he's like, I'm in this 12,000 square foot house. I don't have a single photo of my child. And he's like, that was the darkest moment of my life. And when he was opening up to us, and I was like, this is episode number 1. I was I think we're on to something here.
There's a lot to uncover through a
100%.
series. Yeah. Everyone has stories to tell.
Exactly. Yeah.
So let's talk about, the identity of the, the publication, and then the particular MO for the series. What you're trying to achieve through the series and how you curate the guests. How do they relate?
So Gents Post, the publication, has an ethos, which is redefining masculinity for the modern man. Now, in today's landscape, there's a lot of noise about what it means to be a man, right? Like, you've got varying spectrums and opinions on a man should be the strong stoic type to the man should be completely open with his emotions and whatnot. And a lot of times somewhere in the middle is where the majority are. And the idea wasn't to tell people that this is not a definition of a man, this is not a definition of a man. The idea was, how do we just simply give people the information to make an informed decision, right? If you're a man who still wants to portray a very strong masculine exterior, but you are also equally capable of showing emotion and vulnerability with your partner, with a therapist if you needed one, with your family members, that's okay. You can do that, and it doesn't make you less of a man. But the only real way that we can get to that audience was to have these conversations very out in the open. And so the idea was, let's talk about the things that people still want to know about, which is food, travel, gear, tech, fashion, style. But at the same time, let's talk about things like confidence. Let's talk about things like vulnerability. Let's talk about, if you're a man and you're balding, how do you reconcile that?
Amen, brother. Amen.
You have a full head of hair.
No, but check it. I mean, it happened to me the other day. I'm in the mirror. I'm in the bathroom. I'm getting ready for bed. I'm looking in the mirror. I'm like, shit, my hair's going. You know, and I was laughing at myself, and my wife heard me laughing in the bathroom, right? Because we got 2 bathrooms. She's got too many products. And I don't have many, so I like keeping to my sink. But it was really funny because she comes and I was like, you know, like, check it out. I guess it was the pandemic, all that stress, it's all gone. And then she before I know it, like, I turn around, she's laughing at me, whatever. She's putting some juice in my hair, man. She's rubbing this stuff in my head. I'm like, what is that? It burns, get out my eyes. And she's like, it's not in your hair. She's a doctor, right? So she knows what she's putting in my hair. And it's that, what's that shit that everyone uses? It's Rogaine, man. Rogaine. She's putting Rogaine in my hair. And I was like, no, don't do it. Because the truth of the matter is I don't care. You know, personally, I'm like, you know, when alopecia, man. Alopecia.
Well, there's a lot of men that care. Right?
I know there are. That was just my way of kind of like connecting with pop culture and Will Smith, you know. But like, everyone has their own perspective on dealing with change and dealing with these, you know, how, I guess, you know, it's not even about gender. It's really just about perhaps these stories of even how people deal with change in their own ways, not necessarily finding a conduit normally, right? So how have you, as the series has continued, how have you guys found people opening up through their own ways on the mic? Is it like when they come into the studio to join you on the mic versus when they leave, do you see a difference in them?
Absolutely. Like, because you give them a safe space. So it's like they come in usually because you don't really know, and the first thing is always, oh, that's a nice studio. Like, you always, that's first, I'm like, yeah, it's nice. It has a nice, we're here to talk, right? Like and even with the room, it's the dark colors, has a very, okay, we're actually here to talk. And you start talking, and once you warm up, and it's like, okay, you really get into that situation, and we start talking, so everyone's real people. Like, you know, we're just gonna have a regular conversation, and so they usually even just like, oh, that was good. Like, you know, sometimes they'll kind of relax. Yeah, sometimes they'll even ask, they'll say, how was that? And it's like, not to us, it's how was it for you? Like, how's it feel for you? If you feel good after, that's the whole point of it, because you're getting something off your chest. You're talking about something you need to talk about, something that we all want to talk about. You're going through your story. So they always like feel, obviously not everybody, but for the majority, they feel like, you know, like, yeah, like it was nice. It was, you know, let's do this again. Let's have another conversation. And, you know,
we've even had guests tell us after the fact, they're like, man, that was really therapeutic for me. Like, I was actually having a really bad day that day, and I was coming in here for this series trying to get myself ready to go. And after I left, I felt great. I got to get stuff off my chest. We've had people talk about things they've never talked about publicly. We've had one person, for example, share that they had thoughts of harming themselves, and they'd never admit that to anybody, right? Not to their closest friends. Very personal
stories,
things. And the idea behind it was always, how do we just create a space where it's okay to share those things with free of judgment, free of any biases, just share your story, because in all likelihood, there are tons of other people out there that feel the same way.
Yeah, and if people can connect with the story, they can find truths for themselves in other people's narratives. It's interesting because in this like hypercharged social networking driven, you know, media landscape today, often cases, well, I mean, I find this, often cases, you know, what gets replicated in social media is just the old school push media way of preparing ads. People are advertising themselves to each other. Eat my identity, eat my identity, eat my identity all day long. Buy me, buy me, buy me. Like, subscribe, click. So dialogue is really interesting to sit back as an audience member and digest, because you see back and forth, you see exchange, right? It's a different consumption pattern, I think.
It is. And what's interesting about what you're saying is when Instagram and Facebook sort of first came on, it was always about creating the perfect photo, the perfect image, the perfect video. And everybody moved in that direction. And if you couldn't create the perfect image with the right angles and the right lighting, people didn't care for it. But there's been so much of that now people just want more raw and organic things. They want to, you know, their favorite influencer and artist and musician to show their authentic side. them in the studio creating the music, not just hearing the music. They want to know what goes on behind the curtains. They want to hear from those individuals.
It's so funny because fundamentally, I mean, there's two massively competing kind of owners of the phrase BTS or the acronym BTS, right? There's the Korean pop group, if you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And then you've got behind the scenes. And and BTS is definitely, I think, one of the catch acronyms of the kind of zeitgeist right now, for sure.
Yeah.
People want to see, and you see it in every type of kind of media production has to have some sort of behind the scenes look in its release, because people do they have an interest in not just breaking down how something was produced. If it's a music video, what camera lens did you use? But they kind of want to know that it's true.
Yes.
In that way. Maybe
the BTS, the behind the scenes just shows them as real people. So at least, it's that who's that person is. Right?
Yeah.
So it's really cool that I think that you guys have pursued this series and have offered your guests the ability to connect with an audience in that new way,
Yeah.
And you're just getting started. How many episodes deep have you guys gone?
We've released episode 27.
27.
This past Monday. Yeah. And I think we've filmed now about 31 or 32 episodes total. So we're banking episodes because we don't always film.
Life happens.
Life happens.
Yeah, it's tough to stick
Guests
to a
are not
production
available,
cycle.
and sometimes they have to reschedule, because it's also the caliber of the guests that we're bringing on. They've got very busy schedules. Some of them are actors, athletes, entrepreneurs. They're always all over the place. And then, we want to ensure that we were running a schedule where we filmed and then we published the same 5 days later. And it was always this mad rush to get it done. And it just
like running a newspaper, man.
Yeah,
right.
It's a lot. So having that bank allows us to at least relax and breathe a little bit too.
Yeah.
So tell me some anecdotes, guys. How's it been going with your guests? Who have you had in the studio? Interesting things that pop out to you personally, individually. Samir, you want to just jump off with that?
So we've had, in terms of guests, we've had Canada's top chef in Trey Sanderson, who just won. We've had just Donovan Bailey, a Canadian legend.
Literally today, right?
Literally
he was
today.
just sitting
just
in
right
this room.
before here. Yeah, he was sitting right here. And we've had on Wallace Wong, Chef Devin. We've had on Carl Wolf, Diego Snow. We've had on, I'm forgetting.
But
names
any
now.
particular anecdote from any of those interviews for you personally that resonated?
I've said this before publicly, and I'll say it again. It was when there was a gentleman by the name of Hamza Aziz who runs a popular YouTube channel called What Motivated You, where he just goes up to, the average individual. Because there's a lot of, on the one hand, we have conversations with celebrities and athletes and people who've accomplished public-facing success. He has conversations with individuals like ER nurses, people who don't have the big social media following, but he asks them what motivated them. And he was the individual that openly shared, as an ER nurse himself, that he had thoughts of harming himself. And it was such a powerful moment for me, because it was the first time, you hear it, you see it in movies and all these things, and you hear about it in the news, but it was the first time that not only was someone saying it to me, but that I was in the presence of hearing it live. And his openness to sharing that was sort of an awakening moment, because it made me realize that there's still a lot of work to be done in this space, particularly for men, because we struggle so much to talk about these things. And far too often men are electing to take their own lives as opposed to seeking the help they need. And it's a shame, because we're losing a lot of men that way. And so it really reinvigorated my belief in what we're doing, and emphasized that we need to be doing more. We need to have more of these conversations. We need to get more people talking about this thing.
Yeah, that's a powerful moment for sure. For sure. Matthew?
Mine would have been with Carl Wolf. And I remember
Carl
exactly
Wolf is an artist? Visual artist?
He's a musician.
Musician.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not going to say exactly what he said, but how I understood it was pretty much, you don't have to be number one. You can still be top 10 and eat very well. You can still take care of your family, everything, but it's always still strive to be number one. But don't, so to me, I took that as in even with our podcast, obviously want to be number one, be the best podcast in the world. But hey, if we're number 3, number 4, that's still really good. right? And it's just that that really opened up my eyes, and I could really like start looking at things different, and always reach to be the best. But like, it's okay if you don't make it the best, because you can still accomplish so many things and have all the things that you think being the best means gets you. You can still get all that at 10, at probably even 20. At this point, probably even 25. If you're the top in that of whatever you're doing. So that one really stuck with me.
Yeah, that's a powerful one too, because it's an interesting thing that, like, as you interview people that are probably in everyone's mind, you're the best at something, you know, and it's not about a competition. It can be overtly, like you said, if you're an athlete, being the best means you got to win that title, right? But if you're like an accountant, being the best might mean getting the best tax return for your client that no one knows about, you know? So it's a personal journey fundamentally, because you're answerable to only yourself. And hearing that in people's, you know, anecdotes and their own stories is pretty powerful. Totally. Yeah, it's really cool. I think it's also really cool that you guys have kind of, it seems like you've picked up on this Canadian angle. Like we are here in Toronto, we're in person. And I think it's really nice to bring locals that understand, or at least all work in the same city, live in the same city, and show some of the diversity in those perspectives as Torontonians, as Canadians. Is that something that's part of the programming mandate?
Well, it was interesting because the idea, like I mentioned earlier, of Gents Post is that it's working towards these types of conversations for Canadian men. But as we're starting to see a growing U.S. audience, and actually funny enough, a growing UK-based audience, we're realizing that these conversations transcend borders. And because they transcend borders, we want to start to influence these conversations, or at least have these conversations with men from different backgrounds, right? And so we're fortunate, though, in the sense of, because we're in Toronto and we're filming in Toronto, and Toronto is such a hub in North America, there's always people coming in and out, right? Whether it's for major festivals like TIFF, or whether they're just coming through because, you know, they're in town for something.
People do like Toronto. People like Toronto, so come by.
It's right now we've been fortunate in that it's easier to acquire talent. Like if we were doing this in, you know, no disrespect, but if we're doing this in Winnipeg, it's a lot harder to get talent out there.
In the PEG, unless it's like, you know, biomedical researchers.
Or people who play for like the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah. No, I get it. Toronto has a lot of living links to the world.
Exactly. And that allows us, where we're now at a point where we have people from the U.S. reaching out saying, hey, I'm going to be in Toronto in 2 months, 3 months. Can I come on? So we're now at a point where people are reaching out.
That's brilliant. That's the best thing about an audience growing, is having a participatory audience.
100%.
Right?
Yeah. Because that's when you really start to build a community. And I think that's the biggest thing that we really want to try to do here, is build a community of I'm going to use the term followers, but community members, people who actually listen to the podcast, want to engage in these conversations. They actively share it because they know the importance of these conversations.
So I guess it sounds like you want to expand the dialogue from this table out amongst the audience.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. To that end, I mean, what's coming up, I guess, in the next little while, or at least let's talk about is the beginning of 2023. I forgot about that, especially when you're in the studio. You don't know what month it is.
Or what time it is.
Or what time it is. But what's planned for this year? Are you guys looking at doing an in-person conference or any other programming outside of the magazine, the digital magazine, and the podcast?
Happy to announce that as of January 1st, 2023, the first 15 episodes of Gents Talk, which is season 1, are now featured on all domestic and international Air Canada flights.
Yay!
Yeah. It's a huge, it's like a
this
huge
is
thing.
Guys, do this. You got to pat yourselves on the back.
Good job, buddy.
Oh, we got that, man. Let's go, baby. Let's get it, man.
But it's incredible because
that's amazing.
It sort of just came out of nowhere. Like we didn't have.
Yeah, how did that even happen?
So when we did the interview with Wes Hall, for those who don't know him, is an uber successful CEO. He goes by the name the King of Bay Street. Right? You hear a lot of Wall Street type names and titles. He goes by the King of Bay Street. Went from living on a plantation in Jamaica to climbing the corporate ranks on Bay Street here in Toronto, and had an incredible story. And he was in the process of releasing his book, and he had come on to talk about sort of his journey. And I guess when his episode went live, an Air Canada exec or someone at Air Canada, his name is Norman, had reached out, had seen it, and he told us, and so when he reached out, he told us that he ended up watching all the other episodes that day.
Wow.
And was so enamored, I guess, by the content itself that he felt he needed to reach out. And I don't want to speak for him, obviously, but felt that he needed to reach out and say, how do we get this on our flights?
That's brilliant.
So that was in October.
Yeah.
And we'd been working on that since October. And we had to keep this as a secret for so long, which was really
tough one to sit on, right? You're so proud and excited.
Yeah. And now we're at a point where, every other day we're getting like a text, a photo or a video from someone who was on an Air Canada flight. And it's just like our clips that are there. And it's just an incredible, it's just surreal. But in those moments when, and I know you've had this, we've talked about this, where we're just like, man, is anybody even watching this thing? It reinforces that there are people watching it. And while the audience size may not be where you ultimately want it to get to when you look at other podcasts that are out there, it's getting there.
It's getting
slow
there.
and steady.
It's still
an infant.
And it's still early, and it's crazy because it's still so early.
Yeah.
And you just want to just hit the moon, man. Just hit the moon. But I feel like it's in that process of waiting, and that's like the most difficult part. But it's obviously, you're talking to, the main thing with me about, especially with talking to all these people, is just it's the message. Like it's like be patient and be secure in your knowledge of what you're gonna do, and make sure you, like, if you're gonna do it, just do it. Like, don't let anybody else tell you. And it's crazy because even like this year, like our schedules had a little bit more freedom in it, and we're like, okay, let's take this time to really just go like all in, man. Go balls deep. Let's just give it our all, right? Like if we're gonna do this, let's do it. He's like, yeah, let's go.
Like, like a lot of it, like credit where credit is due. When we first started, after we filmed the Russell interview, like we said, we came here and we're like, the space is perfect, right? Like it's got the turnkey solution, which is exactly what we needed, because I'm not a tech guy. You're not a tech guy. We don't know how to do what Poncho, the magician in the booth, does for us.
Yeah, putting pieces together, whether it's infrastructure to even the space and to like the everything. It's so difficult.
And having sort of being central in Toronto also made it just another, like, more gravy on top type of thing.
Yeah,
which
just
made it
easier for guests to get to central locations. It's not like they got to go to Vaughan or something.
Right. And so having that turnkey solution meant it's one major element we didn't have to worry about. We could focus on quality and the guests.
Exactly, the content.
Exactly. And then, of course, like the very onset of this started with our presenting sponsor, which is Belova. We showed them just the one episode, the Russell episode, and they're just like, Zara and her team were amazing. They're just like, yep, we're in. We think that this could be something big. We really believe in what you guys are building, and we want to be part of this journey. And sort of like, it really took, what's that saying where like it takes a community,
takes a village to raise a child.
Yeah. Like it really feels like one of those where it took a village where everything had to align properly to work out. And so we feel like we've found a nice little groove between coming in, filming, our partners, working with the guests. Like we found that nice process where, everything, it just happens in sync type of thing.
You're not building, you're doing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good feeling.
Yeah.
And that's the feeling also that hopefully helps mitigate that drive to want to see a resolve, right? Yeah. So I understand that trying to climb the mountain thing, but at the same time, you can pause and say, hey, I am a climber.
Yeah.
I don't need to be a climber by having reached the top,
Yeah, still working, yeah.
So I think that's a huge accomplishment in itself, is just getting into the swing of things.
Yeah. And the quality to the content that you were talking about, it's super important when people come in and they sit here and they see the cameras, they see, like, they're not sitting in and they see an iPhone on a tripod, right? Like that, given the caliber of the guests that we have in, that matters to them because they're accustomed to sitting in front of professional cameras and professional lighting and all these things. So if we were putting in front of them anything less than that, then they start to doubt the credibility of what we're doing. And so when they see the production that goes into it, they immediately say, okay, this is legitimate. I like this. I'm ready. What do you like? Talk to me. What do you need from me?
It's nice to hear that feedback, that the environment is not only conducive to enabling people to feel at ease because it's familiar, but also that it's not ostentatious. It's not overbearing. If you're in a TV studio and you've got a false ceiling and you've got false walls and you've got 20 camera, crew, and like things are moving around, it's tough to get intimate, right? So I agree with you. I think this studio is special. It's kind of got the best of all worlds: professional, turnkey, utilization. Yeah, but at the same time, it's intimate, right?
Yeah, it's like it's not overwhelming, but it's still like
it makes them want the BTS.
Yeah, like you get them, they're like, oh, this is just this is good. This is nice.
Yeah.
They was like, oh, this is nice, right? So then it's not like if it's too much of a production, it's the more like then I guess you got to feel like you're more on stage too, right?
Right.
So still like you said, the
performance
same
anxiety.
Yeah, like if it's I think, oh, now I got to really watch what I'm saying because like there's so much like it kind of breaks down. It's like still like compact, right? So.
Yeah, it's interesting, and especially when you talk about like your guests, they're used to being in front of audiences. But a big part of a lot of those identities are building a brand and kind of enforcing that maybe not facade but built identity. So yeah, to kind of like shed that a little bit, you need to relax. It's funny. Although I did see the King of Bay Street the other day, he was sitting just around the court from me. I was invited by a new friend who's the former manager of former or current manager of there's a pop star. I'm not up to music, I still listen to stuff from the 90s all the time. But Jesse Reyes.
Okay, I know who that is, yeah.
So Jesse's manager, I guess Maurizio, we met, we were talking about cool projects that we want to work on. And he was like, hey, I got tickets to the game. And I'm like, cool. I haven't been to a game in a decade. Not since like Vince Carter was around. Yeah. And I'll go with you. And so we were sitting and I just expected, it's going to be a pain in the butt. We're going to have to find parking and line up and all this stuff. And little did I know he leads me through some back passage. He's fist bumping all these dudes. Hey, yo, what's up, bro? What's up, bro? What's up, bro? Bro. I'm like, how many bros do you have? This is too many bros. And everyone knew him at the court because he's always there. Right. And then we sat right on the court, like, nice. And it was amazing because I didn't realize how tall these basketball players are.
Yeah.
Like I'm
massive.
looking, I'm like,
they're huge. Yeah.
And they're 22.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about this. This is a little weird anecdote here, but it only hit me when I was there courtside and I saw the King of Bay Street over there. And then my point about him also was that he was looking exceptionally dapper as usual in his three-piece with his colleague that was also in some funky three-piece suit. And they're lounging. They're sitting back. They're sitting back looking around, just chilling. And I was like, that's good, man. To be in a three-piece suit at a basketball game at the front, relaxing, lounging. That's good. It's a good vibe. And anyway, but it hit me sitting there courtside looking at these 22-year-olds at the height of their career in some ways. And that's a whole nother topic, right? Athletes and lifelong careers and the question mark. And maybe something you talked about with Donovan Bailey. But I looked at that and I was like, everyone in the world watches sports people at the height of their, showmanship and ability at such a young age. And it is kind of interesting because I realized I'm 42, I'm looking at a 22-year-old, and all these dudes are in their 20s. But there's a subconscious assumption that we relate to the sports people, And it's not about stage in life, of course, but it's really interesting. It just hit me at that point. And of course, everyone on the floor around the ring was not in their 20s because you can't be to afford those tickets. I don't know how people do that.
It's funny you say that. So we've had on two athletes now. Yeah. Jonathan Osorio, who plays for Toronto FC and was just in Qatar for Team Canada at the FIFA World Cup, and Donovan Bailey. We haven't had any other athletes. Oh, sorry, Dan Deering. Of course.
Professional volleyball player.
Volleyball player who's on his episode drops this coming Monday.
Nice.
So he's on the path to Paris 2024. In the Canadian duos beach men's volleyball.
Nice.
And the sort of the takeaway from those three conversations was, you're doing what you can within the time that you're allotted because your career is finite, right? Like if you we talked about accountants earlier. If you want to become an accountant, you know you can go into that field and be in that field until you're 60 plus years old and then some if you really wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
As a professional athlete, Donovan today said something along the lines of father time catches up to you and that's it. And Jonathan Osorio said the exact same thing. And Dan said the exact same thing about how, you know, like you get to a certain period where your body just stops working in that way and you have to call it quits.
The corollary, of course, is, you know, The Rock in Ballers, right? Wasn't that the story of Ballers, right?
It's funny you say that. I was actually just finishing the series a couple days ago.
Oh, it's a great one, hey?
It's a good series.
It's a good show.
Yeah.
Good show. It's a shame it's over. It's never coming back.
Are they, like, is there more to it? Because it feels like there's a lot of unfinished.
Yeah, I don't believe that it's been renewed. I feel like he had too many things going on or something. There's some drama, I'm sure. Some studio drama.
There's always.
Blame the pandemic. I don't know what happened.
True, yeah.
Okay, but so I think it's really cool that you guys are on Air Canada, you know, just to pick up that thread of kind of what's coming up this year. Yeah. Season 1 you said is live. Is it going to keep being added to the catalog?
Yeah, so we're in the process of, we're still filming obviously season 2. And so once we roll out season 2 and that's completed, we basically start working on getting season 2 up onto all the same flights. There's about 450 flights. They fly 52 million people a year. So it's an insane number to comprehend. And we don't expect that all 52 million, as nice as it would be, would watch. But even if we got like 1% of that, that's 520,000 eyeballs.
So how is it categorized on the in-flight entertainment system for people that are watching this and want to, watch more on the flight that they're about to board?
So very simply, right now we have hero status, which basically means it's similar to when you turn on Netflix and it starts to show you some of the newest things, like that it shows you 3-second, the photo and the title, and then it moves on to the next one like a slideshow.
Feature, yeah.
So we have that. And then we're in the documentaries and lifestyle section under TV shows.
Cool.
But the impression that we got was that Air Canada is looking at expanding their offerings to include more things like what we're doing. And so we don't know what that means, whether it means there's going to be a new category
or something.
Yeah. I love that because there's so many Canadian stories. There's so much Canadian content that's produced for web, produced for digital, that, can reach so many larger audiences through avenues like
100%,
this.
100%, yeah.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Excellent. Last question about the serialization of the content. How did you choose the end and the beginning of each series or season?
They just wanted the first 15.
Yeah, it was
okay. It's arbitrary.
Yeah. Like it wasn't supposed to. When you started filming, it wasn't like we're doing seasons. We're kind of just filming, and then when they wanted the first 15, it's like, okay, that's a season. Call that. I think at that point we were already at like 16. Oh, sorry, we just finished. We just finished 15. We had a couple filmed, and we were in the process of publishing, but we're like, you know what? 15 is a nice number. Yeah. We'll just, here's 15 episodes. This is now season 1. And that's why, like, season 2 is going to be a bit longer.
Yeah.
Then season 3 will probably go back down to about 15.
It's funny because it's been, a function of the format. It's a descriptor, of course, in the XML feed for RSS and like podcasting, that you can do that you can kind of clump episodes into seasons. But like, I never think about doing that, So even for our own podcast, like I used to have a podcast with like 150 episodes. But someone seeing that on their app as season 1, 150 episodes. Like, I can't wait till season 2 comes out, man. Well, 300 episodes.
Yeah. Like we never really thought about doing it in seasons. Yeah. Like it was always just like, you know what, we'll just keep filming, keep publishing.
Yeah, and that's kind of how things work now. It's like, it just makes perfect sense that it's in seasons, but it's just natural. Like it just flowed. It wasn't like let's do seasons. Like, this opportunity came, we could do seasons. And I said, okay, now we're obviously doing seasons now. Right? Yeah. So now, okay, how long the second season is going to be? Third season is going to be, right? So it makes it good to even present to sponsors, right? We could always use some more sponsors,
Yeah, that takes us to shout outs and and word ups. So
some sponsors,
for people in the audience that are watching this, that are listening all around the world, who want to reach out to the hosts of Gents Talk on the Gents Post. Let's just put it out there, guys. Any final words in terms of things you're looking for, if it's guests, if you're looking for any volunteer or otherwise staff opportunities to help with the publication on either side, and otherwise, where can people find you? Channels?
Yeah, absolutely. So if they're on the Gents Post side, so on the media publication side, if they're writers or they have stories they want to pitch, they can easily send it off to hello@gentspost.com. If they want to pitch themselves as a guest, the easiest thing they can do is to go on our Instagram page, which is Gents Post, and simply
Follow us first.
Like every possible thing that's there. But also just send us a DM, because part of our filtering system, if you will, for guests is very much, what are you currently doing that's of relevance?
Mm-hmm.
What have you done that's of relevance? Because there, I hate that, I hate how pretentious this sounds, but we're targeting a very certain caliber of guest because we want to showcase that the people who've achieved that forward-facing success also have stories behind that. And that's what we're really trying to focus on, which does mean that the series is not exactly guest-wise for the everyday person. There are podcasts that are like that, but this is not one of them. But we are looking at bringing in more experts, whether they're psycho experts, nutritionists, fitness experts, that kind of thing. And same thing, they could find us on all our socials. It's either Gents Post or Gents Talk. It'll always be one of the two. We do have differentiating names only because Gents Post is still the publication that powers Gents Talk, the series.
Sure.
Yeah.
Nice.
Social media manager.
Social media manager would be cool.
Social media manager.
Yeah.
Someone wants to help out. Like the posting is
Tiring.
It's a lot.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot. That would really help.
Yeah. Anyone who's interested in that space, like even like a video, we have a video editor, Roman, who does our post-production stuff. So Poncho, of course, helps us out in the studio while we're here. Roman takes over after the fact. But if there was someone who, let's say, was interested in coming to the studio on the days that we film to do more BTS stuff, because we try to do that.
BTS again.
Yeah. But we try to do a lot of that. And then we're also semi-distracted with, all right, let's make sure the guest is in, they're ready to go, everyone's set, type of thing, that we sometimes forget to do the other stuff we need to do, or we just don't have the time to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So if there was someone that was interested in stuff like that, it's also always something we're open to.
Wicked.
Yeah.
Wicked. Guys, it was nice spending time actually, taking a moment, because we're always seeing each other in the hallway.
Passing,
and I'm always finishing up work, being like, all right, guys, yeah, talk soon. So it's so cool spending some time and sharing your story with the StartWell audience as well.
No, thanks for having us. And
Absolutely.
anyone that's looking for a turnkey solution that offers you everything, trust us. Check out the StartWell studio. It's clutch.
Thanks, man.
This is a great studio.
Right on. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it, bro.
Thank you, bro.
I wasn't sure if you're going to give me a props or... So
yeah. I'm old school. I do the handshake. We did the reverse handshake. Now we'll do the forward handshake. All the handshakes, man.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having us.
Wicked.